Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today we're going to be doing a Kickstarter preview for Pangea by RedImp Games. This is a Kickstarter prototype, so everything that you're going to see here is a prototype and subject to change. And while it is a very high quality prototype in that a lot of these components actually look really great, they are all still subject to change. But this should give you a pretty good idea of roughly how the game plays, and I'm going to give you my overall thoughts at the end of the game. Now, this is not a full tutorial. I will be doing a how to play in the future, so if you like what you see, make sure you click that subscribe button and come on back and check us out here in the future. But I'm going to give you my overall thoughts of this game, and if you want to check them out on Kickstarter, there will be a link in the description below. So let's go ahead and start looking at Pangea. So when you play Pangea, you're going to be picking one of 4 different species vying for dominance on the supercontinent before the end of the world. There is a giant cataclysm coming, and we track that on this Doom tracker that's going to be going until we have the cataclysm, and it's a pretty cool little Doom tracker there. It's Earth, and it's got this giant meteor kind of crashing in and causing a cataclysmic event. You basically want to be in different areas in these different regions, and every area on the map is going to have a 0, a 1, and a 2, and these kind of represent the different places where creatures can inhabit in each of the different zones, and these different areas are, think of the 0 as like the worst area in like this whole volcano. Like maybe that's where there's some lava, not like the best food, but like the number 1 is kind of like better lickings. Like you got a nice little cave, you got some trees outside, you got some shade. But then like the 2 is like the prime real estate, the safest and the best area in the entire area. Like it's like maybe the best cave, and it's got its own natural spring in there, so you got a fresh supply of water, something like that. So basically, out of every area, you've got 0s, 1s, and 2s, and you can have as many creatures as you want in the open area and the lousy area. But when you get them into the nice places, the 1 and the 2, you can only have 1 creature in there. So that's when some conflict will start to happen. And it's important too, because at the end of the game, the higher up in an area you are, the more likely you are to survive, and you do need creatures on the board to survive. That's actually a very cool aspect of this game, is you can score victory points from a lot of different ways, but you have to have at least 1 creature survive in order to be even eligible to win the game when you start counting up victory points. Let's take a look at the species. So we have our different creature boards here, and we're going to take a look at the Sauropsida. And, I want to give a shout out to the art, because the art on these are really nice. And again, this is just a prototype, but this is a really nice creature board. And I think nicer components, especially with beautiful art, really make me enjoy a game a little bit more. So that's also very cool. But additionally, you also have some educational text on here, so this game can be educational as well. But you're going to notice a lot of different things and about your species. You're going to track action points up here, and so when you're doing actions, you'll spend those action points. You're going to have the cost for whatever your effective actions are, and we'll talk more about the way that the actions work, because that's a pretty interesting part of the game. So in this particular guy, to adapt what he would cost, you would charge him only 1, and I also have reference for all the other 3 races here, so you can see, oh well, I'm good at adapting, but these other guys are more expensive. I've got my expansiveness here, which is value 3, and this really deals with combat. The higher the number, the more likely you are to win a contest. We also have different areas for evolution cards. Will go to the right of our, or the left of our board. Adaptation cards will go to the right of our board, and cards that we haven't used will go below our board, right there. And also any special abilities for our particular species will be right there. So whenever you win a contest, you can draw an adaptation card for these particular guys. We also have, so there are 3, for example, we have the amphibians here. Their expansiveness is only 2, so they're not quite as strong, so they're not likely to win as many contests. But whenever you use an active adaptation card for them, you receive an action point. So they can potentially take more actions. So while they might not be as strong, they have plenty of energy, right? And if we look at them, they cost more to adapt, but their survival skills are higher, so they can survive for only 1 point. We have the synapsids,
and they are very, very strong with an expansiveness of 4. So they're increasingly tough, and these are your predators in the game, and that's kind of factors into their play style. And we also have the invertebrates, which are some of the best artwork. I absolutely love this artwork. And the invertebrates are definitely the weakest, but they're also the cheapest to get new guys out there with their populate action. And everybody's got different special abilities and different play styles that factor into not just the stuff on here, but also into the cards they're going to have too. Now let's look at some of the actual individual components. I do want to focus on these minis, which are really, really nice. And I like these a lot. They're kind of like half bases, and they have some pips on the back. And these pips are actually, this is telling you some information on the back. For one, it's telling you their expansiveness of the race that they belong to. So it kind of tells you, it's a quick reference for who would win a combat, but they're also color coded to go with their respective faction. And in this Kickstarter prototype, I've got 1 each. And so what I've been doing is we've been using these to replace our super species. Every race or every species can get basically 1 sort of like their special or their king or their alpha special species. And so we've been using this to represent the one that's really, really cool. But, they may unlock more of these, and you might be able to upgrade your entire army. These are really, really nice, though. We've got our little invertebrate here. It's like Cthulhu forming with only the single pip. And we've got our amphibians right here. And our Sauropsida. And these would also be really fun to maybe paint up and just put like a wash on, bring out some more of that detail while still keeping it look fossilized. That would be fun as well. But looking over here, we're going to have some other tokens that are going to go along with what we've got. So first off, we're going to have plenty of tokens that match our racial symbol. And these are going to be basically whenever we put creatures out on the board, we're going to use these tokens. Now, again, if you buy enough of these, you could probably swap all of them out and have minis all over the board. But one thing that's interesting is that different races have different numbers of tokens available. So while the synapsids are the strongest, they have the fewest potential people, because it's a hard cap. Once you put out all of your guys, then you can't populate the world anymore. You've exceeded how much you can populate. So, but like the weaker species have more, so these guys can almost like Zerg swarm. So while they may not be that strong at winning contests, they're also going to maybe overwhelm the board. And so that's pretty cool. You're going to have wooden chits to kind of track your actions, and you will have little cubes that you'll mark in there when you do take actions. And you're going to have a couple of other tokens that are going to go on the game board to mark different things like your player order, which will change from turn to turn. You're going to mark your place on the instinct track, and you can also mark for objective cards. And all those things are going to go on the game board. Each species is also going to start with different evolution cards, and these evolution cards are very strong, defining ways to change your playstyle, and you can only put 3 of these out. So out of the 5 that I have available, I'm only going to be able to use 3, so not every game is going to be the same. On top of that, you'll notice that I'm going to have like a special animal here and a special animal here, and I can only use 1 special animal. So out of the 2, and every race has 2 different special animals, I can choose if I want to involve, to evolve the Ceratitid or the Paleodictyptera, or I can't. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that word. But basically, I'll read them both because they're going to have different aspects and different play styles. And so, whichever one I want to evolve is going to give me a slightly different aspect. And some of them have a cost, and those costs are going to be paid. For example, maybe this one might be a little bit better, but it has a higher cost, whereas this one has a cost of 0. And I will be getting adaptation cards in the game. And adaptation cards are very, very similar, but this is from a common pool. So these are more generic adaptations like being fierce or aggression or being a scavenger. And there's a couple of those. And I think there's 2 of just about all of them in the deck. And so, maybe hunger is a thing here, but I want to get scavenger, so I don't suffer hunger penalties. And those are, and as I draw cards, they're going to be down here at the bottom underneath my board. And when I'm able to play them, they'll go out over here to the right of my board, and they'll stay there. And I can pay them from here to fuel the cost of some of those cards, and then those will go over on the other side. And so adaptation cards can also be used to get you extra action points, which is also pretty interesting. Now, the game is going to be played over 9 stages or rounds, and those stages are divided up into 3 different epochs. The first being 4 rounds, the second being only 3 rounds, and the third being only 2 rounds. You're going to start with, if we start on the Cicerulean epoch, we're going to start with 6 action points, and as we spend actions, we will deduct points from here for the cost of each action, respectively. At the end of each round, we'll reset back up to 6, and then so on and so forth, until we reach the end of an epoch, and then maybe the next epoch will start off with 7 points, and then the final epoch will start off with 8 points. So we can do a little more on those later rounds, but there's only 2 rounds left, and the world is about to end, so that time really becomes crucial. But at the start of the game, we're going to put our little round marker on 6. And if we want to do an action, we're going to take one of these little cubes, and we have 5 of these cubes. We're going to put them in one of the empty spaces. So if I wanted to adapt, which is the first action, well, that's how I take those different cards that I have and put those into play. Now, the fact that there's only 2 empty spaces here, which means I can at max do the same action twice each turn. But each time I do it, it's going to cost me points. So the first time I did it would have cost me 2 points. The second time I do it, it would cost me 2 more points. So now I'm stuck with only 2 action points left. Now, every player is going to have 5 wooden cubes, so at max you can also do only 5 actions. But it's pretty tough to be able to actually do 5 actions, considering that some actions can cost up to 3 points. So while the invertebrates are able to spawn a lot of people out there, they can populate, which is their next thing. They can put 1 cube down and only spend 1 point to populate, and that's going to take one of your little creature tokens and put it out onto the board in any of those 0 niche, the big circles with the 0 in them. That's kind of the starting area, and you can kind of move up from there, but that's where they start. And you can do that up to 2 times. You can do all of these up to 2 times. The next one is called migrate. Migrate is how you move, and for these guys, since they're small and like little slugs or whatever, they cost 3 action points to move. So it's tricky to move with them, but to move you're going to go either to a neighboring zone, or you can move up or down within the same zone. So if I wanted to move from a 0 to a 1 into like maybe a better and more survivable enclave within my little square on the board, then it's going to cost me 3 points. And that's important to do, though, because at the end of the game, the different epochs can potentially wipe out a lot of stuff, especially a lot of people that are in those 0 zones. And even the 1s aren't totally safe. The 2s are a lot more likely to be safe, but they're not always safe. So migrating is important, but it becomes more important after you do the final action, which is survive. Survive lets you move your instinct marker along the instinct track and start to look at some valuable information. So let's take a look at the instinct track. So this part of the board is the instinct track, and you're going to notice you've got different sectors and different zones, and then you have different cataclysms. And then this final one has a specific sector and zone that are under here. And these are randomized at the beginning of the game. And there's 3 different cataclysms that can potentially happen. It can be gamma rays hitting the planet, it can be a giant meteor, or it can be a super volcano. And those all do different things. But each one is going to have different consequences. Like one might render all of the ice areas uninhabitable and instantly kill everybody in the subpolar regions. The other one might have the exact opposite effect and kill everybody in the middle of the world and leave the polar regions safe. So that's, it's important to try to know what cataclysm is coming, because you might have gotten all your people into the 2 areas, and the 2 areas might not be safe. So when you take the survive action, you'll move up and you get to sneak a peek and say, oh, sector B. So this is kind of like Clue in a way, because now I know that sector B is safe. And what is, well, if we look at the top, we've got A, B, C, and D. So that means whatever is going to hit or what is going to happen is not going to happen in this particular row or this column. We also have different rows, though. We've got subpolar, we've got temperate, we've got interior. We've also got another temperate and another subpolar. But in addition to these being the same, we have different continents. We have Laurasia at the top two. The middle is just called interior, and the bottom is called Gondwana. So we have Gondwana subpolar, and we have Laurasia subpolar. Right. So as we continue to advance up the track, we can look at the next one. Now we know C is also safe. So that means whatever is going to hit on one of the outsides. And so we're starting to learn more. As we get up higher, we can look at some of these. And you'll be able to look at them the whole way. So this is subpolar Laurasia. So that is the top area. So we know that this whole top area is pretty much safe, which is very, very cool. So what happens when an epoch actually hits? So I'm going to fast forward to the end of the game. Let's just say, all right, the end of the game would hit, and oh look, it's a massive planetoid. It's the meteor, and it's going to hit in A in subpolar Gondwana. And so what that means is we're going to go Gondwana subpolar, the bottom, and A. So that means it would hit right here, which is actually not a half bad place for it to hit. So when it hits right here, it's going to kill everything in this zone. It's also going to kill everything in all adjacent zones. Now, since there is no adjacent zone to the bottom and to the left, it's going to be safe. So that's good. So everything that you had in these zones would be killed. Now, for the diagonal zones, it is going to kill everything in 0 and 1. However, the stuff that's in 2 will still survive because it just barely manages to survive. So that is pretty cool. But there's some special rules that go with the planetoid as well because this thing is going to impact the environment. So we have our little reference card for the different things that can happen at the end of the game. So in the case of the massive planetoid, we get extreme heat, and all animals in the subpolar zones and in ecological niche 2 of temperate zones will survive. But everything else does not. So, so it's, there's a lot of destruction that'll happen at the end of the game. And depending on which type of disaster you get, it's going to impact very different things. So if you're able to, go up this track, you're able to learn and kind of hedge your bets and, really like, all right, I really need to go, I know that this, the subpolar regions are going to be safe. So let's put most of my stuff at the top in the North Pole if I can. Also, I wanted to talk about the migrate action a little bit more because movement is, you have these different arrows that are on the map. So if you move from one arrow to across a white arrow, you can move to basically the same or lower. So if you're at a 0, you can just go to another 0. So basically you can travel east or west at no penalty. But if you notice going north, there's a red arrow. Now the red arrow means if you travel across a red arrow, you must move down 1. And if you're at a 0, you can't make it. So in this case, if this player wanted to move up, they were already in the 1. So they could move up, but they'd have to go down into the 0. Okay, so that's something you may not want to do a whole lot of, but you also, you might if you have to. And there's lots of different reasons why you might want to do that. But the other thing is, remember I said 0, you can have as many as you want in there. There's no limit to how many different creatures can be in 0. But if somebody wants to move up into 1, well, there can only be 1 there, so we'll have to do a contest. In this case, these guys are expansiveness 4, and these guys are expansiveness 1, so they will go down, and they will go up. So when you move in there and you have a contest, you don't always kill the other person, you just push them down. There are some cases where you will actually kill, and they will be removed, but normally they just go away. But you also have to look at this other symbol here when people are moving around, because there is a hunger symbol. And this says if there's enough food in here for each person. So in this case, if we were in the second epoch, let's say it would be 3 food. If we're in the beginning of the game, there's only 2 food there. Later on, it's 3, and then later on, it's 4 food. So in this case, if we were in the second epoch, it would be have a cap of 3. So there would be 4 people in there, which means we're overeating and there's not going to be enough food. So we'll put a little warning marker in there. And then at the end of the round, we're going to count up. And if there's still 4 in there, we're going to give it a hunger marker. And that means everybody's going to have to lose their creatures, or they can spend a victory point or a dominance point to save their creature. But that hunger is going to stay there for the rest of the epoch. So all the rest of the rounds in our epoch. And so, basically we've exhausted the food supply, and it's going to take years to recover. So let's talk about the epochs. Until everybody has run out of action points or can't take any more actions, then we're all going to pass and check hunger and do all that stuff. And then we're going to move to the next round. And then once we're at the fourth round of the game in the Ciceral epoch, we're going to move to this change of phase, this turn of the age stage of the game. And one of the things we'll do is we'll get rid of all the hunger symbols, but we're also going to have one of these cards set aside at the beginning of the game. And there's several different cards, which it can be, but they're going to do different game effects. So we'll flip that over and resolve that. And this is going to allow people to be able to migrate special animals if they have them present. And these are all usually some kind of free migration or free population. They're basically some kind of free action, some kind of bonus that everybody will get. Or maybe not everybody, because if you don't have special creatures, you won't get that. But then you'll go to the next round. Then we're going to have two more, and then we'll have another one. And we have a different set of cards for the second turn of the age. This one specifically says Guadalupian to the Lopingian, and then we'll flip those over and do that. And these are all pretty much positive things, so there's really not a lot in here that's going to be negative for you. The biggest negative is if everybody else gets to do something and you can't. Like if it's a free populate, but you've already put all of your guys on the board, then you don't have anybody left to populate. And you go into the last two rounds, and then we go into the end of the world. So when we do the end of the world and we have, the doom track and whatever it ends up happening, we're going to do scoring, and whoever has the most DP, and that's on this tracker here, or the dominance points, whoever has the most dominance points wins. Your dominance point marker, after you pass 19, it's going to flip over, it's going to be a 20, and you can just keep counting and counting. So there's no cap on how many victory points you can get. I'm using the victory points and dominance points interchangeably here. But you're going to get a victory point for every creature that you have on the board after the Cataclysm. So if you chose right and put all your people in the right spots, you're going to get a victory point for each one of them that survived. Also, to be eligible to even score points, you have to have at least one creature survive. That's a very important part of the game, because if you did not pay any attention at all to the Doom track and you ended up having everybody right where the meteor landed, it doesn't matter how many victory points you got, you are not eligible to score any points. Your score is going to be 0 and you absolutely lose. So you have to make sure at least one survives. Which is kind of cool if you have a lot of points and only one survives, because then it feels like it's kind of like you're some kind of apex predator who just managed to be like the most smartest T-Rex in the world or something like that. But there are multiple different ways you can score dominance points outside of just having people left at the end of the game. So one of the things that you can do is you can score objective tiles. So down here at the bottom, each player is going to have these little tokens, and if they after they take an action, they can say, oh, you know what, I won a contest in ecological niche 1 or 2, so I'm going to put my thing there. And if you're the first player to do it, you'll get 3 victory points right away. Second player gets 2, and then the other players get 1 each, right? And each one of these is going to say how many that you get, and these are going to be slightly different each game. So for the first age, you're going to notice these say Cicerulean. There's 5 of them, and you just put 4 out. So it would have been nice if there was a little bit more variety in what could come out, but that's kind of what we have right now. But there are also some Guadalupians. So once we do that turn of the ages, we're also going to wipe away these, all of these, and then we're going to put the Guadalupian out. But there will only be 3 of those, and and they're slightly different ones. You see active evolution cards and 3 adaptation cards. You remove another player's animal from the board, things like that. So they're, some of them are going to favor certain other types of creatures, and some players, some play styles might have an easier time of getting one than the other, or some people might not get any of those. But those can get you a lot of victory points potentially. Another way you can earn victory points is by going up the instinct track. Every time you get to certain key areas, when you go here, you'll get 3 victory points. And for some reason, I'm going to turn this around, but it shows these as PD instead of DP. They're dominance points. As we go up a little more, we're going to see this one's 4 PD, and these are 1 and 1 each. I'm not sure why the board has them listed as PD as opposed to DP. Maybe it's points of dominance, or I don't know if it's a translation thing, but yeah. So if you see PD on the board, that means dominance points or victory points. So PD and DP are kind of interchangeable here. But yeah, so you can get points by doing that. You can also gain points on evolution cards and adaptation cards. There are adaptations, like maybe you're playing amphibians and since you're not that strong, you have a card called Flee and you can get away from battle. And when somebody attacks you, you jump away and you gain a victory point every time you do that. Or maybe the synapses, whenever they devour somebody, like they can get some special cards that when they win a contest, in addition to pushing them out, they also eat them. And whenever they do that, they gain a victory point. So you can do a lot of different cards that are going to give you victory points. And you can even do a little bit of engine building that way to have, to start churning out victory points that way. So you can gain victory points a lot of other ways besides just having your guys on the board at the end of the game. In addition to all of the other components, you are going to have these AI boards, and these are going to be, if you don't have 4 players, you'll use an AI system for the players that aren't actually there. So you're going to have one for each race. You'll also be rolling dice to determine like what actions your AI player will take, and this is going to tell you all of that information. If you need to determine which region they're going to do something in, you have a whole deck of cards for these region cards, and each one of those is like a different area on the board, and that'll kind of tell you where they try to populate and do various actions, etc. Not my favorite aspect of this game because I don't like the idea of just randomizing things, because that could lead to some kind of sillier placements and suboptimal things. So I think it's definitely, I would much rather actually have 4 people play than use an AI system.
So my final thoughts for Pangea. Ultimately, I really like the game. It's got a lot of really good things going for it, and a few things I think could use some improvement, but I'm going to talk about all of those right now. First off, the art. The art is absolutely beautiful. I love the cover art, I love the player board art, I love the art on the cards, I love the art of the board itself. It's very, very pretty, and I love that the work that's put into it also includes educational material as well, so I can totally play this with my kids, and they might actually learn something, which is really cool, so I really like that. I like the theme a lot too. I don't have any games that are like this. And so I feel like everything is appropriately on theme, especially the aspect of adapting and evolving, because I feel like in some cases it actually mirrors natural selection. A couple of cases that happened in some games, and there was one case where an amphibian was fleeing me as I was trying to eat them. And so I evolved into a predator that flee could not be used against, and so I was able to capture them. And so somebody else pointed out, it's like, what just happened is, if this is happening over like the course of years of the Earth's history, they used to be able to jump away from you, but you evolved to be able to catch them now, so they can't escape you anymore. And I'm like, that's really thematic. So I like that aspect. Another aspect is somebody evolved to escape a predator. They evolved these spores that basically made them toxic. So if you ate them, then they would kill you too. And then in turn, somebody else evolved an immunity to toxins. So that same, that had worked before would no longer work. And so but that's kind of like how adaptation would actually happen. If everybody who is eating the shellfish are dying of sickness, the one guy who is immune to that is now going to be passing on his genes down the gene pool, and they're going to evolve that way. So I feel like the cards and the adaptation and evolution cards in this game feel very natural. They are on theme, and mechanically they work out pretty well, although some of them are particularly strong in certain games. I don't know if they're overpowered, but some of them are very, very strong. So that might lead you to hold cards in your hand to not give them back to somebody. That is also one of my kind of gripes about this game, is I think it could use more adaptation cards. Because you have a hand limit of 3, but can also have 3 out in play. Later in the game, especially when one of the objectives came out for everybody to have 3 in play, people were hoarding objective cards and making sure that they kept all 3 in their hand, looking for that perfect one. And we found ourselves trying to deal out more objective cards each round to people and running out of cards. So it kind of slowed the game down. We had to wait for the first person to because if you get more than 3, you have to discard down to 3. So there was a point where we had like only 3 cards left, and we had to deal 2 to all 4 players. And so we're like, right, we'll deal you your 2, you discard. We'll deal you your 2, you discard. And so, it kind of slowed down the game a little bit. So I think if the the adaptation deck had more cards in it, it would kind of speed up that process. So that's one thing I would like to see. But ultimately, I mean, the game still played. It was just a minor inconvenience. The instinct track is very, very cool. That's where you're moving up and you're almost like playing a mini game of Clue. I love this aspect of the game because it's fun, and it also gives you some varying different strategies on how you want to play. For example, you might not want to know anything and just kind of spread yourself all over in hopes that you win regardless of wherever this meteor is going to land, or these gamma rays are going to hit, or this volcano is going to erupt. And just kind of roll the dice. I love to kind of sometimes in a game just kind of roll the dice and see what happens. But besides that, you're not restricted to playing completely random, because you can also watch other players. So that one guy who does all of starts moving up the instinct track right away and is looking for all of the places where it's going to happen. Watch where they start putting their stuff. And then maybe you just follow them. So it's kind of like, maybe the dumb creatures just follows the birds because they feel like, hey, the birds know what's going on. And that could also get you there. But that can also lead to a different layer of strategy where somebody purposely does misdirection and they put all their creatures in the wrong place, planning to move them on the very, very last turn, which is risky. And so there's overlapping layers of complexity that go into some of the strategy when using the instinct track. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the game because it's actually very, very fun. And then, of course, Doom, the end of the game, is very, very fun because in my last game specifically, I was certain, based on some of the tactics that some of the other people who had gotten to the end of the track and knew what was coming, I was certain that it's actually, I know it's going to be the volcano. I know it's going to be the volcano. And turns out it wasn't the volcano, and I lost almost everybody except for one creature left on the board, which was good that I had one. Not everybody else was so lucky. So the whole Doom track is very, very fun. I love the fact that the event comes down and kills a lot of stuff, and it can be anywhere on the board. And that randomness adds a very intense layer of fun for me. So I really liked that. I guess my biggest criticism would be the AI system that I'm not a really big fan of. But I guess that's more of a credit to how much fun the game is with 4 human players. I would much rather play with 4 people than against an AI system. But that's part of my personal system. I don't really like playing AI games as much. I generally prefer to play against real people because that's why I'm into tabletop gaming in the first place. So that is it, guys. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you would like to subscribe and help support the channel, I definitely appreciate that. I will be doing a full tutorial on how to play Pangea beyond the scope of just this video as well in the future, so be on the lookout for that. And I also have giveaways going on all the time, so if you ever want to enter one of those, I have a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway going on right now. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video, and check the link for the Kickstarter information as well so you can get your own copy of Pangea. I want to thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.